Hello everyone, my name is Consolata Gadoni. I'm a PhD at Nottingham Trent University. My project is on use of passive acoustic monitoring for assessing ecosystem degradation gradient in a savanna. So this is how beautiful Maasai Mara is for those who haven't been to Kenya. And it's an important landscape. Over 46% of Africa's land is in savanna and 26% globally. So this ecosystem has a diverse of wild animals. We have the big five, the lions and the rest. It's an important environment for pastoralism in terms of grazing land and also preserving their culture. So for example, Maasai Mara is native for the Maasai community. And again, what we know about climate regulation and carbon storage. So my study area is an important ecotone. It's between an agricultural land and the savanna, the rangeland. So some of the challenges in the study area are fragmentation. Up to 60% of land is fragmented at the moment, agricultural intensification, and overgrazing. So the little portions of the land that has been left after fragmentation is facing overgrazing. Then again, severe flood and frequent drought, which is a common occurrence for rangelands. So I'm using passive acoustic monitoring. I'm testing if it can tell us degradation and restoration gradients because it's non-invasive compared to collecting animal samples or tagging and the rest. And it has a capacity to collect continuous data. I collect data 24 hours during the day and night. Then it's cost effective other than the initial cost of buying the equipment. Then high spatial temporal resolution. So the idea is to provide an easy method to collect and monitor the land degradation and restoration, and instead of the traditional methods. For example, we use soil traditionally to monitor, to assess the status of the land. But now in large scale, it's expensive and time consuming. So this is an elevation map of my study area, and you can see most of the parts are in steep areas. So we published a paper in 2025 to assess the status of how ecoacoustic has been used to assess ecosystem change. There's a huge gap in Africa, as you can see. And again, most people used one taxa. So majority of the papers were using bats to assess ecosystem change. However, it's important to use other taxas because they respond differently. For example, we saw some species increasing with habitat gain. For example, in a restoration site, some species would increase in richness while others would reduce. So it's important to use different taxas or the soundscape as a whole. We aim to use passive acoustic monitoring to evaluate restoration and degradation in our savanna. And to do this, we are exploring the soundscape as a whole, and activities that we're conducting is vegetation and soil data collection, point counts, acoustic data, and ultrasonic, all these to validate if acoustic is a plausible method. This is my study area. It's in Kenya, southwestern part of Kenya, and it's between two conservancies in the northern part of Maasai Mara, Enarao and Mbokishi Conservancy. So I'm using a land degradation and surveillance framework. It's a framework by World Agroforestry, and it's proven to successfully tell the status of the ecosystem health. So we are using the framework, putting our recorders in between the tiles, the small boxes that you can see, and collecting vegetation, soil data, bird point counts in the same area to have enough data to validate acoustic as a method. So the framework requires a 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers area, which is the blue box that you can see. And within each box, we have 16 tiles, the smaller squares that you can see. Within each tile, we have clusters, an area of 1 square kilometers, and within each cluster, we have 10 plots randomly placed, and it's within each plot that we collect soil samples and vegetation at transect and plot level. Then at the center of the 1 square kilometer, we place a recorder. We have 16 recorders in the landscape. And they have a good coverage because a recorder has a capacity to record 500 meters radius. So far I have 4 seasons of vegetation data. Soil data, one is required to record once in 5 years. So I have 1 sample already. Then 8 seasons of bird point counts, over 21,000 hours of acoustic, and it's important because you can't tell a land is being degraded by assessing 1 season, so we need data over time. Then we tried trapping birds, which wasn't a success. We tried that in 2 seasons, and we added another component of soil acoustics. I'm using Kaleidoscope by Wildlife Acoustics to analyze the acoustic indices. I have the BI, Bioacoustic Index, Acoustic Complexity Index, Acoustic Diversity Index, Normalized Different Soundscape Index. Then I'm also exploring BirdNet and filtering for the birds in my area. Some of the analysis that we have, we can see small alpha diversity. So we can see the difference in diversity in the different clusters. Then we also explored remote sensing, and from NDVI, soil adjusted vegetation index and bare soil index, we can see the landscape has variation in terms of bare soil and also vegetation gridness. So all these measures will be correlated with the acoustic indices. These are not official results, but it's work in progress. And we can see results that we would expect and some that we wouldn't. For example, the bioacoustic index, which is an index that shows the complexity of biophony in a soundscape, is higher in places that we would call unhealthy. For example, a land that has been changed from its natural state to intensive agriculture has high biophony. And how we are interpreting this is we have many sounds of a few species. For example, 1,000 birds of just a seed eater, while the healthy ecosystems, which have maybe 10 species of birds, have just a small number. So we are trying to balance and analyze the interpret the indices appropriately for our study area. So the next step is modeling, and we see if truly we can use acoustic to assess degradation and restoration. Then we have all these data so that we can validate the method and probably advise the conservancies and other practitioners to just deploy a recorder and assess the state of the land. And it's a robust framework for assessing ecosystem health in African savannas. For example, my area is 10,000 hectares. That's a really big area, and it's expensive to keep sampling soil, vegetation in transit, and all that. Then by recording the current sounds, we have a baseline for future projects to assess if the ecosystem is being restored or it's degrading over time. Then beside the research component, we engage the local community, telling them what degradation is, why we use acoustic, and how other methods, how acoustic methods can be used to assess degradation. Also work closely with the rangers, training them on how to trap bats, to conduct land transect and all that. Exploring also soil acoustics and training the community and rangers on how to do that. All this is not possible without the support of the funders and the small grants and my supervisors. And that's how big a team that I need to collect all that data. And asante. Thank you.